Here we are with Chapter 8, Pearl. Do you remember who Pearl was? Let's see if you remember. Here we go. I was happy to get back to room 26 on Monday, and even happier to know that I'd helped Sophie out. I always like to lend a helping paw. Mrs. Brisbane asked how the weekend had gone. "Oh, it was wonderful," Sophie said. "You should have seen Humphrey in my dollhouse. He got in the tub and on the bed, just like it was his own little house. It would have been nice to have a real house, but I was happy to be in my cage and back in room 26. I had my schedule for Monday all worked out. Math, nap. Language arts, nap. Lunch, nap. Recess, nap. Science, reading, and nap. I even dozed while my friends came into room 26 that morning. But my schedule didn't work out because Mrs. Brisbane started the day with the announcement that we had a special guest. I raced to the front of my cage, but all I saw were my usual room 26 classmates. "Nicole, would you like to introduce our guest?" Mrs. Brisbane asked. "Now?" Nicole said. Mrs. Brisbane nodded. "I'll get her." She disappeared into the cloakroom and then came out carrying a large tank. "This is Pearl," Nicole said. "Mrs. Brisbane said I could bring her so you'd see what a real dragon looks like." There was quite a lot of commotion among my friends, as you can imagine. "I'll put Pearl's cage on the table next to Humphrey," Mrs. Brisbane said. "Then everybody can come up and take a look at her." "Eek!" I squeaked. "Can you put her somewhere else?" Mrs. Brisbane was already walking over to our table. "I'll put her right between Humphrey and Og so they can both see her," she said. I was curious about Pearl, but I wasn't sure whether I really wanted to meet a dragon. And when I could actually see her, I was certain I didn't want to meet a dragon. My whiskers wiggled and my tail twitched, but I couldn't squeak a word. Pearl was small for a dragon, but huge compared to me. Her head was shaped like a triangle with sharp spikes on the sides. She had a long tail with more spikes, large ugly claws, and she was all kinds of colors from green to pink. She looked right at me and stuck out her tongue, which is really, really, really rude. "She's so pretty," Kelsey said. Maybe Kelsey needed glasses. I don't think Og liked Pearl either. He started hopping around his tank and twanging boing, boing, boing. I climbed up to the tippy top of my cage so I could get a better look. "Boing, boing, boing, boing," Og continued. Then Pearl hissed. Even over all Og's noise, I could hear her hiss. I didn't think that was a friendly thing to do since Og and I live in room 26 and she was just a visitor. But I kept quiet. I didn't want her to hiss at me. Meanwhile, my classmates pointed and pushed and tried to get a better look at Pearl. "She looks like a dinosaur," Sophie said. "She looks like a dragon," Harry said. "She's actually a reptile," Nicole explained. "Wow," Thomas said. "We have a reptile, a rodent, and an amphibian in our class. And we're all mammals." Mrs. Brisbane laughed. "Very good, Thomas. But now you need to return your seats and begin class." My friends all moved to their desks. Pearl stayed right where she was. "Hi, Pearl," I squeaked, though my voice was shaky. "I'm Humphrey. Welcome to room 26. Pearl turned her head a little. Hiss. No manners at all. The dragon in the book was much nicer. Boing, boing, boing. Og was so excited he did a high dive into the water side of his tank. I swallowed hard. If Pearl was going to be next to me all day, I really, really, really wanted to make friends with her. At least I didn't want to be her enemy. I tried to be calm as I looked over at her tank. It had rocks, leaves, a water dish, even a thermometer, which was something Og and I don't have. "Nice tank," I squeaked. Pearl turned her head from side to side, and then she did it again. "Hiss," she said. I was pretty sure Pearl didn't like me. How could anybody dislike a friendly classroom pet like me? I guess Og was on my side because he left the water side of his tank and said, "Boing, boing, scree!" Scree is the sound he makes only when he thinks there's danger around. "Calm down," I told him. "Maybe she's scared of us." I guess Og had never thought about that because he was quiet for a long time. "Let's listen to Mrs. Brisbane," I said. "She's our friend." Pearl, Og, and I were totally silent for a while. There wasn't a squeak, a boing, or a hiss, which was good because Mrs. Brisbane had something important to say. You've written a couple of paragraphs about what you'd do if you could fly, she said, and you're doing a good job. Now I want you to turn your ideas into a story. Instead of writing about what you would do if you could fly, I'd like you to take those same ideas and write a story as if you already can fly. My friends looked puzzled as I was. Instead of saying, if I could fly like a bumblebee, I'd fly to the top of a mountain. Write it as if you are a bumblebee and describe what the world looks like through your eyes, she said. In other words, turn it into fiction. My friends looked unspeakably puzzled, but Mrs. Brisbane helped them one by one. During recess, Pearl, Og, and I stayed on our best behavior. I was beginning to think dragons weren't so bad after all, but I changed my mind later in the day when my friends were at lunch. I decided to take a chance and get a closer look at Pearl. I jiggled my lock that doesn't lock and the cage door open. I quietly tiptoed over to Pearl's tank. To squeak the truth, up close, she was even larger and more terrifying than I thought. Those spines looked sharp, and she had a large tongue, which she stuck out at me again. I'm pretty brave for a small creature, so I crossed my toes for luck and tiptoed closer. But I wish I had a magic shield like Gil Goodfriend. Welcome to room 26, Pearl, I said. We're so happy to have you. Pearl's neck puffed up and she said, hiss, even louder than before. I backed up all the way to my cage. Never mind, I squeaked as I pulled the door behind me. At the end of the day, Mrs. Brisbane read us the last chapter of the Dragon Book by Cameron Cole. It was sad, sad, sad when Gil Goodfriend said goodbye to Goldie and the other dragons. But when Gil got home, everyone in Bumpshire celebrated with a parade and a town picnic. I looked over at Pearl and saw her tail twitching. At the end of the book, there was a hint that Gil and the dragon would meet again, which made me very happy. But if Goldie had been as unfriendly as Pearl, I wouldn't have liked the book so much. I was so happy when Nicole's mom came and took the tank away. Goodbye, Pearl. Come see us again, I squeaked. But when she was gone, I added, but not for a long, long, long time. I was tired that night, but after Aldo left, I opened my cage door again and hurried over to Og's tank. What do you think of Pearl? I asked Og. He didn't say a thing for a moment. Then he started hopping up and down, boing, 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 he said. I agree, I told him. She wasn't polite with all that hissing. I still think she was a little afraid of us. She's probably never seen a frog or a hamster before. Og turned his head left. Then he turned his head right. I imagine he was thinking. Boing, he shouted. He sounded cheerful. Think of it, Og, I answered. A dragon was afraid of us. Or maybe she was a little jealous because we get to be classroom pets and she doesn't. For a second I was sorry for Pearl, but that didn't last long. I still had work to do, so I went back to my cage and grabbed my little notebook. Despite the fact that I was tired, I knew I was behind the rest of the class, and I had to catch up. I looked at my list of things I'd like to do. Help Holly visit Phoebe. Help Mrs. Brisbane visit her son Jason in Japan. Help Joey see more of his dad. Help Cassie go to the ocean. Help Sophie go to the Para Island. Help Simon go to Italy. Help Kelsey go to the ballet. Help Daniel meet Dee Dee Denby. Reading the list, I realized that I would really like to do is help my human friends. There was no way one little hamster could accomplish such big goals in real life. But Mrs. Brisbane said it should be fiction. Maybe if I used my imagination, I could think of something. Watch out, I squeaked to Og. There might be another brainstorm. If I could fly, how could I help my friends? Flying squirrel wouldn't work for me. I'd need to fly like a hamster. But one hamster couldn't accomplish everything I wanted to do. I'd need my own great big airplane. Then I could fly to the pyramids and Phoebe's house, and I could fly Mrs. Brisbane to Tokyo. That was it. Flying Hamster Airlines. I could fly all my friends to places they wanted to go. And since it was an imaginary airline, I could fly to imaginary places too. Og, if I could fly, I'd start my own airline, I squeaked. He splashed around in the water, which usually means he's happy. But I don't know if frogs even know what an airline is. That means you fly people all over the world in a big shiny airplane, I explained. Hey, if you could fly, you could start a flying frog airline. Boing, 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 boing. Og leaped into the water and began to splash. I guess he knew what an airline was after all. I grabbed my pencil and began to write. I'm proud to be the first hamster ever to become an airline pilot. Now that I've started my own company, flying Hamster Airlines, I can fly my human friends anywhere they want to go. I kept on writing without even pausing. First, I'll drop Holly off at Phoebe's house and spend some time catching up with my old friend. Next, I'll take Joey to the town where his dad lives. Then I'll zip over to Europe so Simon can eat Italian food, and I'll take Kelsey to see a ballet in Paris. I wrote and wrote and wrote. I didn't even notice how tired my paw was getting, and when I was finished and I read what I'd written, I felt, well, proud. And that's the end of the chapter. Here's his writer's ramblings. I tried and tried again, and then I kept on trying. And now I'm so happy, my imagination's flying. Get it? Flying? So he finally got an idea. Do you see how that happens? Sometimes we feel like we're just stuck and we can't figure out what to write. And we just start jotting down ideas. And then one idea leads to another idea, which leads to another idea. And now he's got a great idea. Who would have thought? Hamster Airline. It makes sense, doesn't it? All right, so we're going to read chapter 9 tomorrow. It's called Rosie's Casa.